Hi, alright, so here is your past life spread. So, what we're going to do is we're going to look at where you were, what you did with the majority of your time, an important day with the relationships and the feelings involved, another important day, relationships, feelings, and the death and lesson learned. And we'll get hints of time throughout. So, immediately, what I am feeling, just what came through is we're looking at a male life, and it feels like we are looking at the time period of when Africans were brought over to be slaves, and that we're looking at a slave life, just a full on slave life. And I don't get a lot of these, I've gotten a couple, but it's not often at all, but this one's like boom right here. So what's coming to mind could be, this could be coming up just simply based on what's going on in the world right now. So like if you are having if you're being triggered by the racism and the Black Lives Matter and the All Lives Matter and that kind of thing that's going on right now, I feel like that would be a connection. And it's the kind of thing where if you're triggered greatly by it, like there's different different degrees of being triggered. So if this is really pulling at you, if it's bothering you, that would be a connection. Just because I feel like that has to be one of the reasons why this feels like it's coming through. So, let's just start here though, and also let's make a connection real quick to the idea of looking at a male life. There's something about this where the message or idea coming through is basically about assigning your own power to your identification or your role, because while we look at things a certain way, like men have more power control generally speaking and women have less generally speaking, we're here looking at a male life where that control that we usually assign male power to doesn't conform. So we're looking at the idea of redefining or re-examining the roles that you perceive in certain either genders or certain people or certain, basically there's this theme coming up a lot lately where it's about looking at the programming within you and deprogramming so that you can reprogram, let's say like a computer software system like that we are, so to speak, and that you can redefine and reprogram according to your belief systems, and move from and go from there. And that is what we are looking at a lot of people shifting into, is the idea of basically redesigning their software. So let's start with where we're going. I also want to mention though that what's going to happen is images and impressions come through, and your job is going to be to try to make connections where you can in your life based on what comes through here in your current life. And you can make direct connections or opposite connections. Sometimes our soul experiencing one thing likes to experience the opposite in another life, just to gather lessons and experiences. That's why we're here. So keep that in mind. I'll try to help how I can. All right, so this card is the Nomad card. And usually I get it when people don't have a home base or they're traveling a lot, and it feels very much like we are going from Africa to bringing them to the States. And I feel like I'm trying to see if it's yeah, it feels like it's the full on like the States at the like start of when all of the slaves are being brought over. It doesn't feel like we're looking at Caribbean, which I've had before. This feels more like we're looking at hitting where it is the South. Okay, so we're looking at the traveling. Okay, yeah, so that's why we're getting this card. We're looking at someone who's being uprooted from the homeland and brought over, and this connection would be, for example, if you feel, it's a theme, if you feel like you haven't found yourself to be able to become rooted in a community or feel like you have a home base, stable foundation kind of thing, find yourself in your life moving here, there, trying to find home. And that would be one way. The other way, because of the uprootness here, would be that in this life you were determined to have a home base, a root, a community, somewhere where you know everyone, you're stabilized, you're not going anywhere, you're safe, that kind of thing. Which, by the way, brings up something else, is the idea of safety and security in your life. So the connection would be something like, if you are someone that needs to have security system in the home, that you like the idea of guarding yourself and your property, either with a gate or plants or whatever it might be. Are you someone that is paranoid? Are you someone that when you're alone in the dark, it's like you're just looking over your shoulder, or wherever it might be, you get weird paranoid feelings at all? That would be a connection as well, because it feels like there is something about the swiftness of removal from the home to where the destination was. So this would be if you are someone also that you feel like, oh, the other shoe is going to drop, this isn't going to work out, kind of like not wanting so much to make plans for the future, or when making plans for the future, having a thought in the back of your mind like, this might not work out, this might not work out, kind of thing. So if you find that you are having those thoughts, this would be a message for you to let you know that those are the thoughts you want to work on allowing to kind of observe and fade away, where meditation comes in and helps with that, where you learn to how to observe the thoughts that don't serve you and allow them to just move through your mind and move out and fade away. Because those kinds of thoughts are holding you back, or they're restricting you in some way, and they don't serve you and there's no purpose for them. So if you have those thoughts, this would be the time to start working on that and learning the discipline to relieve yourself of those kinds of thoughts. This is also another thing, that if there is a security issue in your life, that this would be a message for you to let you know that you don't need to be concerned with that kind of security, that kind of fear comes from this life, the defenselessness. So in your current life, you might have been what is it called? You might have chosen to come in as a very strong personality, or a strong person, even physically very strong, or into things that would acquire strength within your body, like martial arts, or something that would be, I guess, what most people might find like an intimidating kind of thing, or something that would require physical labor in order to achieve. Again, like martial arts, like, you have to go through all these things in order to get to the belts kind of deal. But it also means that, oh wow, if she's at this belt, that means she can like really kick butt, like that kind of thing. So if that is something that you find in your life that's important to you, this would be the connection. Why? Because here we're looking at a feeling of defenselessness. Now, there's also the idea of being taken for a fool. So if that is a trigger for you in your current life, like an emotional trigger where one of the things is like, I don't want to be seen as foolish, I don't want to be seen as weak or dumb or stupid or lacking common sense, if that's like a big deal for you, or if you notice that about people, like maybe that's one of the big things you notice about people is their common sense or lack thereof, that would be connected to this as well, because it would be your soul not wanting to be taken for a fool again, if that makes sense. So if you ever have that concern or fear about yourself, or if that's one of your worries, so to speak, that would be something that you can release or let go of, because it does take up space that's not necessary, doesn't serve you anymore, because it doesn't come from this life anymore. Even if you can link it to things in this current life, it originated here, and that's where it's mainly from. So when you learn about things that you feel are true and resonate in your current life, and it comes from another life, you can let go of it through meditation or hypnosis, that kind of thing, because it no longer serves you. And then when you recognize it, it's like calling it by its name and releasing it, if that makes sense. So the card here, this is the slavery card, and a lot of times we get this card when it's not even slavery, when it's more like, oh, someone who feels enslaved to their job or enslaved to whatever it may be. But in this case, we are looking at beginning a life of slavery, and there's this thing coming through of this huge dichotomy between the life that was then the life you were brought to, where the life that was very organic and natural and easy, and not so much easy because there were survival elements, but easy in the sense of ease of mind because you were with your community and people and comfortable in that, brought to this whole new land, and everything changed. So again, we are looking at a fear of change. Okay, I'm saying again, we're just bringing that up now. So if you have issues when it comes to change, this would be connecting here. But also there's a thing, not just issues when it comes to change, but the idea of maybe even you are someone that makes sure that you are ready for change, in the sense of almost, again, it's the idea of not wanting to be taken for a fool, not wanting to be caught off guard is what it feels like, not wanting to be caught off guard. So this also means that it feels like you have your guard up a lot. So if you have your guard up a lot, this would be a message coming through for you to let you know that there is space being taken up within you with the walls that you are putting up in order to stay on guard. And there's a certain aspect of relaxation that you have not yet achieved in a certain waking consciousness state. Okay, this what I mean by that is, where some people might be able to sit down and relax instantly into a meditative state or the meditative brainwave, it would take you quite a lot of time to do that, or hard to do, or even finding that you can't do it at all, very, very tricky at the same level of waking consciousness. So if you and someone walked into a meditation class and it began, and you both sat down and you were both in the same state of mind, it would take the other person it would be much quicker for the other person to just drop into another brainwave, like a trance, so to speak, rather than you might be taking longer because of this being on guardedness, if that makes sense. So if you connect with that in any way, or you resonate with that in any way, this would be the reason why is here, because again of the defensiveness, of the change of pace quickly, the didn't see it coming kind of thing, so that would put the soul's back up, so to speak. So if you feel like your back is up all the time, again, being guarded, it would come from here, and that means it no longer serves you in your current life, and it would be time now to start to let that go in whatever way you can. And what's coming to mind, quite frankly, is the idea of you looking into certain breathing techniques and focusing on the breath, and that would be most helpful, it feels like, if you want to get into a much quieter state, or a more a less guarded state, is focusing on the breath and certain breathing techniques. So consider that and just sit with that. Now, if anything doesn't resonate with you, just tuck it into the back of your mind, because sometimes things come up in a few months or a year later. It doesn't matter. People find that they come across things as they move on, and they're like, that's what she was talking about, kind of thing. So just tuck it in the back of your mind. Otherwise, whatever resonates with you, take what works for you, okay? So we're going to go to the first important day, and keep making connections where you can with these two cards, because, for example, slavery, for example, that might be a trigger for you when you hear about people who are still in slavery around the world. Maybe you're someone that's like, I don't want a diamond because they're mined. I don't want this because they use child labor. I don't want this, that kind of thing. If you're triggered by the idea of slavery on an emotional scale, that would be a connection there. And then, of course, the idea also, not just the community and being rooted at home, but the idea of traveling. How does traveling fit into your life, and what emotions spike when you travel? So it's also the kind of travel. So if you have issues crossing the ocean on a boat, I feel like that would come from here. And if not, that's fine. But another thing about travel would be, one, if you travel and you like to be in charge of the travel, like the agenda, and you need to know where we're going and what time we're going to get there and this and that, if you notice that you are a hoverer when it comes to travel plans, that too would be a connection to this, because of the lack of control and power you had in the journey and destination of this travel, okay? So keep that in mind. We're going to the first important day now. All right. So the first day here, it's the move, 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 let's go card. This day here is the spouse card, and this is the disappointment card. So what I feel like this day is it feels like you and your partner came over together, but was brought together, but it feels like this day you're separated, and it feels like you're separated literally by like one or two properties away, kind of thing. So the disappointment, of course, comes in, like you're not paired with your mate, and it feels like there is great dissatisfaction in that, because it feels almost like a promise was broken. And I'm not saying someone promised you, but it was almost like that was your main worry, was that you would be separated, and you were in some way assured that you wouldn't be, and yet here's the separation happening. However, it's like they soothe you by saying, but it's just like a property over. So it's almost the feeling of, let's say, a father owning property and land, and then the son living next door, and it's like the father got you and the son got your wife, kind of thing, so to speak. So this is a day of separation. So in your current life, if you have separation anxiety, this is where it would stem from. And there's a great unfairness, dissatisfaction in that. And so it might be that you have a hard time coping, or if you have a hard time with, if you don't have good coping mechanisms when it comes to great disappointment. And if that's the case, this would be a message for you to work on finding the right coping mechanisms. And it's not just that. It's not about coping through disappointment. It's learning how to mentally soften disappointment. So we're looking at the idea of expectation. So if you have ever heard before or felt before in your life that you hold certain expectations and have found yourself to be disappointed, there's something here about that. Hold on. Okay, so there's this idea of relying on yourself for satisfaction. And it almost feels like if you have to rely on yourself for satisfaction, there's this idea, this feeling of not being able to turn to another and almost like give not complete, but like give over some control to another in getting satisfaction. Okay, so for example, this might speak to any sexual issues that you may have in your life as far as receiving versus giving, where, hold on, it's interesting. So if you have a hard time, and not just sex, but like in your life, being in the receiving energy, having a hard time being in the receiving energy, it's because it's almost like the idea of you accepting something and then the fear of it being taken away, and the disappointment in having been open to accepting and even like eager or excited about it, and then it being taken away. So if you have a fear of, I want to say like a fear of abandonment, there's the separation anxiety, but a fear of like Indian giving, so to speak. The term being an Indian giver, like if someone gifts you something and then takes it back. If you have come across this theme in your life, this would stem from, it feels like a core fear that comes from this and has come through and is still held in your energy field. And this would be significant, and this would be where you would want to focus right now on relieving, is that fear. And learning to be in the receptive energy. I feel like that's the main message of this day, is coming out of the fear of disappointment and allowing yourself to be in receptive energy so that you can receive abundance in ways that you've been waiting for or wanting. Because the only reason you're not getting what you want is because you are having resisting energy because of like a lingering core fear of it being taken back. Does that make sense? So consider that and sit with that and see if that resonates with you, because these kinds of fears take up a lot of space in our physical and our energetic beings, and that's the space that abundance wants to come in and fill, but it's already being occupied by fears that don't even stem from this life and that don't serve us at all. And we hold on to the fear because it's already there, so we know it's real, and we as humans like to hold on to things that we know is real versus letting it go and just hoping for the thing we want, not being certain that it's there, like we know that the fear certainly is. Does that make sense? It's kind of a flawed premise to live by, but that's how humans are. We cling to the things we know are real and there, even if they're not good for us, and then versus just letting go and trusting that the things we want will be coming or are already on the way. Does that make sense? So just sit with that and see if you resonate with that. Because what we're talking about here is really the idea of manifestation. So if that is what you are dealing with right now, wanting to manifest a certain thing into your life, this will help you in big ways. So keep that in mind, and let's see, the separation is there. Okay, I feel like we covered that. So keep making connections wherever you can with this move card, the spouse card, and the disappointment card. One more thing about the spouse card. This thing that happened here might make it so that in your life you might hold back in your relationships as well. Either you'll hold back in your relationship, again, because of the fear of it, the other shoe dropping kind of thing, or the opposite, where this one, you are taken away from each other. So in your current life, you might be someone, when you're in a relationship, you go all in fully, which could also be unhealthy in a way. So just something to consider. And if it doesn't resonate with you, that's fine. But that's just another thing that might be coming up here. Now, keep making connections. We're going to go to the next important day. Alright, so this is the graduation card, and when we get this card, it's, it can be academic, but it can also be like, when you're being promoted, or a graduation of the mind, the emotional body, the physical body, just where you're improving, or getting better, or achieving. Here we see the child card, and then here is neutral. So, what is happening on this day? What is happening here is the feeling, what's coming through is your partner, your wife here, is it feels like either is pregnant or has a child, but there's a child in this time, in this whatever's happening right here, and it's your child per se, but there's something in your mind that is just doubting it just because simply you guys are separated. And it feels like when spouses that are slaves are separated, like you are, that there is a day, like your rest day, where you're allowed to come together and see each other, and it's not often. I want to say maybe like once or twice a month kind of deal. It's kind of brutal, but it feels like you have a kid, or your wife is pregnant, and it feels like it's a torn feeling, because on one hand it's graduation, as in this is our family and we're bringing a child into the world and we're moving up, so to speak, in our family. Like that kind of thing is a joyous thing usually, especially for your people. And then on the other hand, there's this neutral card, because you are hearing rumors. It might not be your child. It could be the slave owner's child too. There's a lot going on here. So there's this idea of not attaching emotion to the child, almost like withdrawing emotion, if anything, and holding back until you're certain it's your child. So in doing so, there's this, what's it called? It's called being withholding. So here we are seeing the beginning of the emotional energy of withholdance, which feels new. It feels like if you were back in your homeland, that wouldn't be like, your people don't know that feeling. And then here, with all of these brutal changes being made to your life, it's like a new sensation arises where you're so uncertain that you don't just give in love, and you don't give in and say, I can't wait for this child, it's my child kind of thing, but rather you withhold, and you are like, okay, well, we'll see how it goes, which is, under these circumstances, like totally understandable, but it's just this whole new sensation. And I feel like it's speaking to the idea of, if you in your current life are undergoing new changes of your emotional body or your mental state or whatever it might be, that it would be your wisest to invest in the discovery of them and understanding them, rather than withholding from yourself even, and not diving into things that might feel uncomfortable because you might fear what it means, or you don't want to know what it means, or it might mean a lot of change, or it might mean a lot of work. But this would be the time when you actually do tackle that idea of where you are withholding from yourself, what walls you've put up. It's almost like the idea of like when you're in denial of certain things of yourself, and deep down we know that we're denying going face to face with certain things about ourselves that we know we have to work on, if that makes sense. This would be the time for you to tackle those things and to approach those things and trust that it's not going to be as bad or scary as you think. But rather do that than keep pushing it off and basically just not catering to. This is self-healing, self-love, and if you hold back from that, you are not showing yourself the self-care that you need to show yourself. Self-care really is tackling issues within yourself and not ignoring them, if that makes sense. So this can also speak to whether it takes a long time for you to warm up to people, or that it could also speak when you are approached with a circumstance with people that you love, or just a circumstance where you don't know how to take it right away. You might find that you are withholding, or like if you are disappointed in someone, you might be withholding rather than embracing, or that kind of thing. And this would be, again, an issue to tackle, because there's a difference between taking space to process and then being withholding. So like if there's a circumstance like where this is happening, you can still be loving and take space for yourself, versus taking the space and being withholding at the same time, kind of deal. Like it would be seen by other people as holding a grudge until you work through it and come back around, if that makes sense. I'm not saying you do hold grudges, but I'm saying that's the kind of energy it puts off, is what it feels like, is the withholding energy. So if that speaks to you in any way, just sit with it, process, feel it out. And if not, that's fine, tuck in the back of your mind. This could also speak to an issue where you feel like someone is being withholding to you because you are withholding to your partner here. So a lot of times our souls come back and experience the other side of things, where you might be the one who finds yourself in a position where someone else is being withholding from you. And if that is the case, As long as you stay true to yourself, don't make yourself smaller than you are. Don't change yourself if you come from a good intentional place. You don't have to change yourself if someone is being withholding because they want you to change and they're not going to give you love or affection or whatever it might be, unless you make a change. That's an ultimatum. So if you find yourself up against an ultimatum of some kind, the best philosophy I have found, and what it feels like here, is walk away. Because someone that loves you is not going to give you an ultimatum. Just sit with that one too. Okay, so keep making connections where you can when it comes to this. Also the idea of being suspicious when things are going really good. If you are suspicious when things are going too good, or you do that thing where it's like, oh, this is too good to be true kind of thing, that right away is a resisting thought that if you have found things do, what is it called, veer off course, or like everything's going good and then something happens, it's because you have resisting thoughts and you are feeding that wolf. You are feeding your resisting thoughts into the momentum of this circumstance happening. It's going great, 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 and then you're like, oh, it's too good, it's too good, it's too good, it's too good, like that kind of thing. So just try to flow when things are going good. Just try to flow with it without attaching any expectation to the outcome, and just kind of enjoy the process as you're moving along, and not have those resisting thoughts, and see what happens. Okay. Keep making connections where you can here. This can also speak to how you feel about children, or you feel like if you have kids, how you felt like about having them or while you were pregnant. It could have felt very off, or could have felt, you might actually, if you have had children and you had postpartum, that feels like what might be coming from here, just FYI. If you don't have kids and you had the theme of like, I don't want kids or whatever, because this also would come back to this too, where you're like, is this child mine? Is this the right thing to bring a child into this circumstance? Like, this isn't our beautiful homeland. This is a horrible situation, and we're bringing a child in. How can we do this? So there's guilt involved. So if you ever felt guilty about having children, or anything like that has to do with this kind of circumstance, that too would be a connection. And if not, that's perfectly fine too. So keep making connections. We're gonna go to the death card, and this is the murder card. And this simply feels like you just died as a slave, and it feels like it was murder because it feels like it was under the circumstances of being a slave that you were killed. So it could have been like literally like a whipping kind of thing, or a killing by white people kind of thing, or it could have been not getting the proper nutrients, or the environment or whatever it was weakened you. So if you find, what I feel out of this, quite frankly, would be if you are dehydrated a lot, if you get chronically dehydrated, this would be a message for you to drink more water, and this is where it would come from. There's the idea of if you do not like the heat, it would come from here, because it feels like there's something about the stifling heat. Or in your current life, it'd be opposite, where you are learning to love the sun or love the heat because you're able to utilize it under your own circumstances, your control. Like, I'm going to go outside and lay in the sun because I want to, versus having to work in the fields under the sun. You see what I mean? So if you find that you actually like the heat and sun, it would be because you want to befriend it and make friends with it again after hating it here. Because I feel like that was part of the death as well, was the sweltering heat. So keep that in mind. Make connections where you can when it comes to that kind of death, heat, hot, weakness, fatigue, dehydration, and having no control over yourself, basically, like no control. You couldn't help yourself. So defenselessness. There you go. Comes up again, where we talked about that before. So keep that in mind. And yeah, okay. So now we're going to the lesson. So the lesson card here, this is the let go card. So we were talking about letting go of certain things before. So we want to really focus here. What it feels like is letting go of not just the things mentioned here that match up to your current life that you want to let go of because it no longer serves you, but also the idea of letting go of it because the reason being is to create the space within your being, in order to hold the right and proper energy that wants to come in, that's full of love, acceptance, self-love, self-care, abundance. It can be any kind of abundance, like just happiness, contentedness, financial abundance, anything you have been wanting kind of thing. It needs space. So make space, get rid of the things that don't serve you that we spoke about here. And that's where I feel the letting go card is coming in. It's a big lesson, because letting go, again, will create the space that you need and want in order to see what you want, any of the changes or shifts that you want to occur in your life at this time. Okay? So keep that in mind, keep making connections where you can. And anyway, there is your past life. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you're able to make some connections, and thanks for letting me read you.